Greetings friends, if it's not done already, don't forget to subscribe to the channel. I'm happy to introduce you to my Spear build on Diablo IV in order to do nightmare dungeons between 80 and 90. It's a good balance between damage and tankiness, and with a bit of better items you can also try your luck at the nightmare dungeon level 100. For the skills, you'll be playing Corpse Tendril for vulnerability and pulling enemies, the Corpse Explosion in order to trigger the Corpse bonuses, and Decrepify to be much more tankier. It will help you a lot if you wish to push after Nightmare level 90, but you can also consider the Bone Storm or Iron Maiden before that if you want. Then Blood Mist to be invulnerable, Bone Splitters in order to get some essence when you need it, and lastly, of course, the Bone Spear. For the gear we play the unique helm for the stats and the passive, and for the chest the fact that you can spawn blood orb when you use a corpse. For the stats, try to get some stats and if possible damage reduction or bone skill damage. For the glove +4 to bone spear, and after critical strike chance, intelligence, and for the passive increase critical strike damage with the K passive. For the pants we'll be playing Temerity in order to have a barrier, and for the boots either stun to close enemies or increase movement speed after landing a critical hit. Also try to get some stats on it, especially if you want to have the double bonus for the rare nodes of the Paragon. You'll want a two-handed weapon with the Bone Spear legendary power, and on it try to get intelligence, vulnerable damage, and if possible core damage. Then for the amulet percentage of stats, bone skill damage, and increased critical strike chance of damage after using the tendrils. For the rings you'll want critical strike chance and also damage, bone skill damage, vulnerable damage, and so on. For the passive, first one increase damage where you have a barrier, and second one increase essence hitting a vulnerable enemy. You can also take the one giving you essence when you heal yourself. At level 90, this has more current stats, so as I mentioned, damage, critical strike chance, bone damage, and so on, and a bit of resistance where you can. For the gems you want rubies because now Temerity is based on your maximum life, so it's important to put life wherever you can, and on your weapon either increase damage to crowd control enemies or to vulnerable enemies. For the heart, this one is mandatory to trigger corpse, and this one is interesting to increase your critical strike damage. You can also put the Barber Heart instead if you wish. For the last one, damage reduction is very interesting to have. For the Book of the Dead you want to have increased critical strike chance, here a bit more of essence, and lastly increased critical strike damage. You can also consider increased life if you want to have more life and barrier. For the skill tree we start with the Bone Splitters and the fact that you'll get some critical strike chance. Here you want to have this max in order to have more damage, and of course the Bone Spear with the critical strike chance and the additional projectiles. After we have the Blood Mist with creating corpse and both corpse passives. You also have 1 point in corpse explosion, 3 points here in order to increase damage to close enemy but also to reduce it, increase damage to distance enemy, increase damage to curse enemies, and 1 point in Decrepify. After you have 3 points in the increased healing, all the bone passive and the corpse tendril with vulnerable, and to finish this in order to increase damage reduction, sacrifice value, and lastly ossified essence. So if you wish to play Iron Maiden or the Bone Storm instead of Decrepify, you just have to remove 2 points just here, of course remove Decrepify, and put 3 points here or 3 points on the Bone Ultimate. For the Paragon we'll get the first glyph in order to have increased damage to crowd control enemies, and you can go back also to get some life just here. We'll get to the first board with the Bone passive, and this glyph boosting the blue nodes but also giving you a bit of fortify. Make sure to get these blue nodes, and then we have this board increasing damage after consuming corpse, and this glyph increasing damage to vulnerable enemies. We go down, we have this one increasing damage while you are fortified, and we won't be using the Scent of the Death, so you just make sure to get this critical strike damage. This next board in order to have increased critical strike damage too. We won't be using the overpower node of course, and lastly the last board, the one of the blood orbs that we won't get, with this glyph increasing damage while he'll see. So for the gameplay, it's a Nightmare dungeon level 87, monsters level around 140, and you just have to keep two things in mind with this build. First one, use a potion before fighting, so you can start having a barrier, and the second one, use Decrepify, especially if you see a pack of ranged monsters. I also wanted to show you this specific dungeon because you have the suppressor affix on elites and it can be a bit tricky to deal with. To simply kill them, just use your blood mist in order to pack them, and after that you can use your bone spear when you are inside. Thanks for watching this video, I hope that you'll have plenty of fun with this build, and good luck if you try the Nightmare 100 or Lily's Echoes.